Welcome back, everybody, to the Seattle Sonics, MyNBA franchise here on NBA 2K22. We continue the offseason going over free agency in today's episode, which should be a fun one. Last episode was the NBA draft, and it was a very exciting video, so in case you missed it, I'll leave the card at the top right of the screen just so you can go ahead and check that out. It was a very crazy draft, and our Sonics certainly made the most of it. The first two picks went as expected, with Deo MyNBA going to the Spirits and Quentin DeColo to the Raptors. But then all hell broke loose, largely in due part to the next two selections, with Bryson Davis and Jose Colon going off the board way earlier than expected. That meant blue chip talents such as Jazz Jackson Jr. and Kyril Story fell a little bit. Jackson fell to 5 with the Pacers, but Story kept on falling, and the Seattle Sonics went ahead and made a move up to the 9th pick. Now, they had to give up a lot. Lonnie Walker, the 25th pick, 2 additional future first-rounders, Luke Foreman, and a future second-rounder. That was a lot to give up, but in my opinion, it's worth it. We believe that Kyril Story has the chance to be a star with us, and he is one of the elite prospects in this draft class. We had another first-round pick at 22nd overall. Of course, we got pick sniped. The player we were targeting, Darvarius Johnson, went right before us, so we gladly settled on Chance Dumas instead. Dumas is a raw offensive player, but is phenomenal on the defensive end of the floor, and I think he's going to be a very fun player at the next level. In the second round, we got pick sniped again, targeting Rashad Butler, but instead selecting Dikembe Mutombo, who is a really good sharpshooter out of the University of Cincinnati. So despite getting pick sniped twice, I felt that we had a really fun rookie class with Mutombo, Story, and Dumas. And now that brings us to free agency. We're going to do everything up to the Summer League today, which will be in the next episode because I know you guys are probably going to want to see that. So let's talk about where the Sonics are entering this free agency period. We don't have many big contracts on the books other than Marvin Bagley, who is on the player option. I do expect him to accept it. I obviously kind of regret the Marvin Bagley deal. I was hoping he would have a career renaissance here, and it didn't really work out. He could be a player we look to move depending on if anybody else wants him, and that's assuming he takes his deal. Cam Reddish, Jakob Poeltl, and Bol are all free agents for us. Poeltl is an unrestricted free agent. I believe Bol might be unrestricted as well, while Cam Reddish is restricted. So as we go to the team and player option stage, unsurprisingly, Marvin Bagley does accept his player option, so he is back. And we're going to accept our team options on Davion Mitchell, RJ Hampton, Jaden Springer, Jim Arnold, and BJ Boston. As we look at the rest of the league, a lot of the young guys got their team deals accepted. Not really a surprise there, but we do see some veterans getting their player options declined, like Kristaps Porzingis, Chris Middleton, and others. Mike Conley had a team option declined along with Malik Beasley. So Cam Reddish does have a qualifying offer, and after his previous season last year and how he played in the postseason, he's definitely a player who I would like to bring back on a long-term contract. Throughout much of this season, he didn't really seem interested in coming back, but now apparently he is, which is a good sign. So this free agency class at the top is stacked. LeBron, Jokic, Zion, Ja leading the way. There is a ton of talent in this free agency class, and a lot of big moves could be made, not just by us, but by teams around the league. So I don't think we're in a position to sign one of these superstars. I don't think LeBron or Jokic is going to want to come here. As for Zion and Ja, they're going to get their contracts matched no matter what. Zion is a 93 overall superstar, and Ja Morant just won the Finals MVP, so there's no way those teams will let those guys go. So we have to do a little bit more digging for certain players, and initially I was very tempted by shooting guard Caris LeVert, who has bounced around a little bit. He's coming off a pretty solid season with the Chicago Bulls. His numbers are a little bit down, but that's mainly because the Bulls have so many mouths to feed, so that's to be expected. At 28 years old, I think he can be a nice veteran presence for us, but I also don't want to lock ourselves into a long-term deal. So we're going to offer him 1 year, $17.69 million, with a team option for the second season. I would rather have that flexibility, even if it means giving him more money. Sticking with the shooting guard position, another name who tempted me is Kevin Porter Jr., who we know very well on this channel, specifically from the Cavaliers series last year. I think this would be a fun pickup. Porter is a combo guard. He's a really strong passer, which is something he's really improved upon, and obviously he's a great scorer. Not to mention, he is from the Seattle area, so this would be a homecoming for him. I think someone like Kevin Porter Jr. would want the opportunity to play in Seattle, and it would be fun to bring him back, because I really enjoyed him in the Cap series last year. So now we need to talk about centers, because we do not have any on the roster, and I'm not really confident in anybody on this roster to be able to play center. Marvin Bagley struggled there last year. Buzz Wigginton, I don't want him playing out of position. And Dikembe Mukuamu is not a center, and he's a second-round rookie anyway. So we need to look for someone in the free agency class, and I don't think it'll be Nikola Jokic, although that would be fun. I do think we need to scroll down a little bit, find players who could pique our interest. What I look for in a center is more of a traditional low-post big, because I like to have floor spacers at the other positions. I'm okay with having someone who's not a great shooter, but more so someone who can be reliable inside offensively, who's not a total bricklayer at the free-throw line, and someone who plays great interior defense. Those are the qualities I look for at the center position. Although Bol Bol does stretch the floor, I do kind of want to bring him back. His numbers went a little bit down this past season, but obviously the team was way better. So again, that's sort of to be expected. I don't want to lock ourselves into a long deal, so we're going to offer him 1 year for about $8 million. So those are the three players we're going to offer here in Stage 1, and all three of them would accept. Caris LeVert, Kevin Porter Jr., and Bol Bol have signed their deals, but we cannot sign all three of them. We have to make some decisions when it comes to these contracts. And with LeVert and Porter, it would be redundant to keep both of them. So the question is, which of these two do we want? Caris LeVert is the slightly better player. He's a little bit more well-rounded, and his deal is for less years, so it's less of a commitment. But Kevin Porter Jr. does have more long-term upside, considering he is 5 years younger. He is a better scorer, I would say, than Caris LeVert, although a little bit inconsistent. And again, he is from the Seattle area, so I think a homecoming here would be pretty fun. And obviously, he is a channel legend, so it would be cool to have him back. Now, as you can see, we would have to renounce Cam Reddish's rights in order to keep Bol Bol for that deal. I'm just not willing to do that. So for now, we will not have Bol Bol's contract accepted. But going back to the LeVert and Porter debate, I want to figure out which one would be a better fit with our current roster. Kevin Porter Jr. can play the point. However, I don't really see that as a major need. But as we look at the other wing spots, there isn't anybody who I think has the scoring ability to just randomly explode one night for a big outing. Jordan Poole isn't consistent enough, neither is RJ Hampton, and we can't really depend on Kyril Story to do that because he's only 19 years old. Cam Reddish as well isn't even on our roster, so because of that, I think having someone who can be an elite scorer at times like Kevin Porter Jr. might be a little bit more valuable. Both LeVert and Porter are good playmakers and defenders, so those kind of cancel out. So because of this, I think Kevin Porter Jr. would make more sense for us. He is restricted, so the Rockets could match him, which we have to watch out for, but they do not. So Kevin Porter Jr. is coming home to the Seattle Sonics. He is only one of 3 players to sign. The others are Ja Morant and Nikola Jokic, who is signed with the Kings. But Nikola Jokic has had some second guesses because on day 3 of moratorium, he is back in free agency. I would second guess signing with the Kings too, so to be honest, I don't really blame him. Sorry, Sacramento. As we sim past day 3 of moratorium, it will now be official that Kevin Porter Jr. is a member of the Seattle Sonics, and we also have officially renounced the rights to Bol Bol and Jakob Poeltl. Both Bol and Poeltl could come back, but we just don't have their rights at this moment. So as you may notice, now there are a bunch of glitched up G League players here in free agency. They don't usually sign anywhere, so I'm not really worried about them, so just try to disregard them. So let's go to Cam Reddish now. I'm ready to sign him to a long-term contract, 2 years with a player option for year 3 for just shy of $50 million total. I think that's a fair deal for both sides, not an overpay, and I think Cam Reddish is a big part of our future. So now as we talk about the center position, there are a few good fits. Jackson Hayes, Jakob Poeltl, who we could bring back. He was very good for us in the postseason. As we go down a little bit, Naz Reid I think could be fun. The only downside on him is his size. He's only 6'9". I would prefer someone who's a little bit taller at the center position. Goga Bitadze from the Indiana Pacers is coming off a breakout season, so maybe he can cash in on that, and we could look at him. And if we really look at Bitadze, I think he'd be a really strong fit. He's a good interior defender. He's a good rebounder, so he's good enough in the paint. But he also does have some offensive versatility. He can score from inside and from mid-range as well. Not much of a three-point shooter, But I think Goga Bitadze could be a nice pickup for us. And then I also want to bring back Jakob Poeltl. I think having Poeltl and Bitadze battle it out for the starting center spot could be pretty solid. So, unfortunately, as you can see here, we cannot sign both Reddish and Goga Bitadze, so we have to make a move, and I think this is where we now trade Marvin Bagley, who's making nearly $30 million per season. So the trade here doesn't look like great value, but you have to keep in mind, Marvin Bagley is on such a big deal, and he's coming off a pretty bad season, so he doesn't really have that much value. We're going to trade him to the Utah Jazz, who figure, hey, we don't really have much to lose here. The Jazz are starting their rebuild. We've traded away Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert in the last episode. They don't really have a ton of size, so they're figuring, why not go ahead and take a shot on a player like Marvin Bagley? The Jazz will be sending us a future 2027 Detroit Pistons first-round pick, which they got in the Donovan Mitchell trade, along with big man Udoka Azubuike, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. So that deal is done. Marvin Bagley is gone. He is now with the Utah Jazz, and we can now officially sign both Cam Reddish and Goga Bitadze. And Jakob Poeltl, who is still here, doesn't have any other offers outside of our Sonics, so he should be able to sign too. But I would make a slight adjustment. Rather than 2 years, I'd rather give him 1 year, especially now that I know that we have Goga Bitadze. Poeltl would accept the deal, so he is now with the team. So I have now simulated up to the end of free agency. We have not made any other moves since we signed Jakob Poeltl, and I do want to talk about the rest of the league. I also want to point out that Karis LeVert has not signed yet. There are a few other notable players in here like Mike Conley, Tyler Hero, PJ Washington, Victor Oladipo, Derrick Rose, and others who have not joined teams. But let's take a look at the players who have signed. The big fish were, of course, LeBron James and Nikola Jokic. LeBron is back in Los Angeles on a 1-year deal. It seems like he's going to retire with the Lakers. But Jokic is now headed to the Big Apple. Bing bong! He is now a New York Knick. The Knicks needed to make a sign and trade in order to make this work. So they have agreed to a 3-team deal with the Bulls and the Wizards that sends RJ Barrett to Chicago. They needed to clear up this contract in order to get Jokic. And I think the Bulls could use some more wing talent like RJ Barrett. So the other parts of this deal include Patrick Williams and a future first-round pick going to the Knicks. Patrick Williams is a solid young player. He could be a starter for them, and he could also be a trade chip for a third star with Jokic and Randle, along with that first-round pick. There's also another part of this deal, though. I felt like the Bulls needed some more size, and they didn't really need DeMar DeRozan, so we are swapping DeMar DeRozan for Deni Avdija. I think the Wizards could look for some more star power coming off a great season last year, and I think DeMar DeRozan can provide that. As for Deni Avdija, he can play the 4 for the Bulls. I don't really think the Wizards needed him all that much. So it's a very fair trade in my opinion. The Bulls get better, the Wizards get better, and the Knicks clear up money to sign Jokic, added with the fact that they have more assets to trade in the future. The Knicks would have to make another deal in order to get Jokic. They're sending Robert Williams and Josh Jackson to the Clippers for Keon Johnson and TJ McConnell. Again, that clears up money. Keon Johnson can be another young trade chip, and TJ McConnell will likely be their starting point guard. So as we look at this next team, they have Jokic and Randle at the top, but the rest of this team is super young. Emmanuel Quickley, Patrick Williams, Darvarius Johnson, Keon Johnson, Graham Boucher. These are a ton of trade chips for them going forward. The next big free agent chip to fall was Chris Middleton, who signed a 4-year deal with the Timberwolves. A very interesting landing spot, but it appears Minnesota is convinced to keeping Karl Anthony Towns around. The Timberwolves made the playoffs last year, which was enough to convince Cat to stay, but with Cat being a free agent next year, Minnesota realizes it's pretty much do or die time, so they signed Middleton. They also re-signed D'Angelo Russell. Clearly, they are committed to building a winner around Karl Anthony Towns. From there, more players return to their former teams. Russell Westbrook signs with the Spirits. So clearly, St. Louis wants to be competitive next year, and that's not just with adding the number 1 overall pick, Deo Benigba. They've also added Russell Westbrook. Kemba Walker goes to Houston. I don't really get that signing for them because they already have so many guards. The Pistons were able to bring back their core, re-signing Jeremy Grant and Malcolm Brogdon. So with obviously having Donovan Mitchell now, look out. They also somehow have enough money for Gordon Hayward. So he was part of the trade that sent Donovan Mitchell to Detroit. Hayward was on OKC and was sent over to Utah for salary cap reasons, but I guess Utah decided to buy him out, and he now signs with the Pistons. Dylan Brooks to the Spirits. Kobe White signs with the OKC Thunder. Of course, we signed Kevin Porter Jr. to a nice contract, along with bringing back Cam Reddish, Jakob Poeltl, and signing Goga Bitadze. And then the rest of the signings down here don't really matter as much. So here at the end of free agency, quite a few teams look a lot different. The Knicks have obviously added Nikola Jokic, giving them their first legit superstar since Carmelo Anthony. The Nuggets, meanwhile, do not have Nikola Jokic anymore. They can still build around Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, or they could always look to restart. The Timberwolves, of course, added Chris Middleton. They look to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference next year, while the Bucks, outside of Giannis, this team does not look good. If the Bucks underwhelm, maybe Giannis looks for a new home. So look out for that as a possible storyline early next season. The Detroit Pistons are going to be one of the early title favorites after making the finals last year and adding Donovan Mitchell and Gordon Hayward to the roster. The St. Louis Spirits look to be a lot more competitive, signing Russell Westbrook and Dylan Brooks. And shortly after free agency, they also signed Tyler Hero on a one-year contract, so he is now on this team as well. I think St. Louis is going to be a really fun squad next year. Meanwhile, for our Seattle Sonics, as we hop into the player progression stage, Buzz Wigginton goes up 4, continuing to cement himself as our franchise player. He now has an A- mid-range and an A three-point shot. So that's pretty cool. He's a much better shooter than he was. A lot of our guards go up as well. Jordan Poole and Donovan Mitchell up 1, Reddish up 2, and Oscar Jabasilan goes up 3, and he now has an A+ three-point shot. Kevin Porter Jr. goes down. That's a little bit unfortunate, but the big surprise here is Dikembe Mutombo going up 4. I don't really know why that happened, because he just got drafted. So this completely changes everything. I thought Mutombo was going to be a G League player. Now he looks like to be a rotation player year 1. I was really not expecting that. I've never seen a second rounder go up before their first season, and I noticed there were actually a number of late round draft picks in this draft class who went up multiple ratings in the player progression stage for whatever reason. I don't really know why, but I'm not complaining. Dikembe Mutombo is now a 76 overall. I hope everybody enjoyed today's episode. Next time, we will conclude the offseason. We're going to go through the Summer League and then everything before the regular season. And from there, we will enter season number 3 of the Sonics MyNBA franchise. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.